Chapter 16 Trixie's Challenge. "Lights, camera!" Trixie said, strutting down Main Street towards Ponyville Library. It was just before lunch, and enough ponies hurried through the streets to give them the facade of an audience. "We don't have time for either of those things," Crystal Ball said, rolling her eyes. "Well, it doesn't matter. The great and powerful Trixie needs no props. The great and powerful Trixie will best Twilight Sparkle with skill alone." "Sure you will, but does it really have to be a public challenge? It would be so much easier to sneak into her home and set her bed on fire. Then we could take her place and feed on the dragon for weeks or even months." Crystal Ball trailed off, a hungry look in her eyes. Trixie edged away from her. "No, simply defeating Twilight is not enough. Trixie will crush her. Twilight Sparkle will be publicly shamed and humiliated. It's what Trixie was promised." They came to a stop just outside the library. "Twilight Sparkle!" Trixie called up without hesitation. Ponies stopped in the street to watch. A few recognized the unicorn and frowned in annoyance. After a beat, the second-story window flew open. "Twilight Sparkle, I, the great and powerful Trixie, have come to challenge you to a contest of magical skill to prove who the most powerful unicorn in all of Equestria truly is. Do you accept my challenge, or will you run and hide from the inevitable humiliation you—" "Oh, hey, Trixie," Spike called down from the open window. Twilight's not here right now." Trixie dropped her head, deadpanning as Crystal Ball laughed. "Of course she isn't." "I still think we should go back and ask Scootaloo again," Applejack said, absent-mindedly nibbling a donut. She sat with her friends at a quiet table in Sugar Cube Corner. "She already told us everything she knows," Dash answered flatly. "Maybe, but there ain't no harm in double-checking. Maybe she forgot something." "She's been through enough. There's no reason to go bugging her." "She ain't been through anything she didn't agree to," Applejack said. "She knew that Discord was bad news to start with." Yeah, so did we. Didn't stop him from turning you into a liar," Dash countered. "Well, no, but—" Applejack trailed off. "But what? Discord tricked all of us." Dash looked pointedly at each of her friends in turn. "Scootaloo made a mistake, but she sees that now, and unlike the rest of us, she didn't need any magic spells to help her. So forget about grilling her for more answers and come up with something that'll actually help." Twilight dipped her head. "We're at a dead end. Every tracking spell I know has failed. I know you feel bad for her, but we need more information if we're going to beat Discord." "Sugar Cube," Applejack said, voice softening. "We know why you're being so protective, but we need to talk to her again. No pony wants to hurt her." Rainbow's face fell and she stared at the table, eyes heavy with guilt. "I should have helped her before it got this bad. I should have figured out what was happening sooner." Although Twilight blew a frustrated sigh, her eyes were filled with sympathy as she looked at her friend. They'd heard the same story almost every day for a week. "You couldn't have known what was going on." "I screwed up. I didn't just miss something. I'm the one who pushed her into it." "Nah, stop that right now," Applejack said, her voice filled with a sturdiness that made Dash look up from her melancholy moping. "Just 'cause Discord said it, don't make it true." "Even if we beat Discord," Rainbow continued, ignoring Applejack's interruption, "she'll have to live with that cutie mark her whole life." Further discussion was cut off as the doors to Sugar Cube Corner burst open and a powder-blue unicorn stepped in a flash of sparkles and smoke. "Twilight Sparkle, I, the great and powerful Trixie, have come to challenge you to a contest of magical skill to prove who the most powerful unicorn in all of Equestria truly is. Do you accept my challenge, or will you run and hide from the inevitable humiliation you'll doubtlessly face?" The room was silent for a beat. "Not her again," Rainbow muttered, dropping her face onto the table in exasperation. "Of all the worst possible times." "Sorry, Trixie, we're kind of busy right now," Twilight said, barely sparing a glance for the other unicorn. "So then you admit the great and powerful Trixie is the most magical unicorn in all of Equestria?" "Sure." Trixie paused, uncertain. She hadn't considered Twilight might not accept her challenge. She looked out the door at Crystal Ball, who just shrugged. "If you win this challenge, the great and powerful Trixie will tell you who freed Discord." "What?" the filly outside hissed. "What?" Twilight coughed, nearly choking on a pastry. "The great and powerful Trixie knows about Discord's return, and has information the rest of you want, but she will only give it to you if you manage to beat her." "I vote we ask the princess to lock her up till she talks," Rainbow said. "Seconded," Applejack chimed in. "Just hold on," Twilight said quietly. "She's probably just lying to get us to play along." "Probably," Rarity agreed, "but we can't be sure. Honestly, accepting her challenge might not be a bad idea. We all know you're the more magical unicorn. At best we can get some new information. At worst it'll get her out of our mains." Twilight sighed again. "Fine, Trixie, you're on." "Good. Meet Trixie tonight at 7 in Ponyville Park." The sun was beginning to set as the 6 ponies made their way to the park. A large wooden platform had been erected just north of the small lake. It was a perfect square with no back walls or curtains. A light had been placed in each corner to illuminate the stage. Trixie waited at the center of the stage, surrounded by waiting ponies. Apparently word of the magical competition had got around. "All right," Twilight muttered, climbing onto the stage without preamble. "What's it going to be? Magical knot tying, levitation, pulling bunnies out of—" Gah! She dropped to the floor as a bolt of static purple lightning passed overhead. "The rules are simple. The first pony to leave the stage loses," Trixie said, horn glowing dangerously. "Wait, you never said anything about a fight." "The great and powerful Trixie will best you, just as she banished the dreaded Ursa Major." "Ugh, not that again. No pony can—" Twilight jumped aside from another bolt of magic. "I never agreed to—" She jumped straight up as a blue fireball passed underneath her. She caught the next bolt on a magical shield and, with a shout of frustration, disappeared in a flash. She appeared next to Trixie and fired her own bolt of magic. It knocked Trixie aside, rolling her several yards until she slid right off the stage and hit the ground below. Only after she caught her breath did Twilight notice the cheers of the onlooking ponies. She shook her head and walked to the edge of the stage to check on Trixie. Her friends had circled around below and nudged the corner back, while the other ponies began to file away. Trixie sat on the ground, dirt in her mane but otherwise unharmed. "All right, spill it," Dash said. "What do you know about Discord?" But how?" Trixie mumbled, ignoring the question. She looked up at Twilight, angry tears in her eyes. "Trixie is better than you. Trixie is the element of power. I can't lose against some small-town pony like you." "The element of what now?" Applejack asked. "Trixie is the element of power," she repeated. "The opposite of the element of magic. Discord said—" She turned to glare up at Twilight. "I'm greater than you. Without your friends, you're nothing." Twilight looked down at her, a realization forming in her head. "Discord got to you, didn't he? Convinced you to free him by telling you what you wanted to hear." "It was easy," Trixie said, stomping a hoof as she stood. "Trixie undid your spell in a matter of seconds." "You said the opposite." Twilight trailed off. Her head snapped up and she blinked in surprise. "So Discord really did create his own elements." "Is that even possible?" Rarity asked. "I don't know," Twilight said with a frown. "Rainbow Dash, could you fly to the library and have Spike send a letter? We need to get the princess here to talk to Trixie." With a quick salute, the Pegasus took off into the darkening sky. Trixie watched her go, a jolt of panic going through her. She turned on the spot and charged forward. Applejack had been expecting the move, and Trixie ran headfirst into the farm pony. "Y'all ain't going anywhere." Trixie bounced and stumbled, falling flat. She looked fearfully at the 5 ponies moving to surround her. "Stand aside! The great and powerful Trixie will not be detained like some petty criminal." "Not until we get some answers out of you," Twilight said. Her voice softened as she said, "The princess knows how easy it is for Discord to manipulate ponies. I'm sure if you help us, she'll go easy on you." Anger flashed in Trixie's eyes, and her mouth went off before she could think about it. "You think Trixie was manipulated? The greatest unicorn in all of Equestria is not some pony to be tricked and used." "One thing I don't get," Applejack said, rolling her eyes, "is how power is supposed to be the opposite of magic. That's what you said, right? The element of power? Trixie sniffed and looked down her snout at Applejack. Trixie's the opposite of the magic of friendship. Trixie's power is all her own, and not dependent on any pony else. Twilight frowned. That didn't sound quite right. She'd known since facing Discord the first time that the strength of her magic had little to do with her element. Otherwise, Discord could have stopped her after taking her horn. He hadn't believed he'd won until she'd given up on her friends. So wouldn't the opposite of magic of friendship be loneliness? She thought aloud. He picked you because you drive every pony away. She put a hoof to her mouth a moment later. She hadn't meant to voice the idea and hadn't realized how mean it would sound. Trixie turned on her, teeth clenched in anger. The great and powerful... Twilight was looking down on her with a sad expression. The great... Every pony around her was staring at her with that stupid look of pity. She stumbled over her words. And then Trixie laughed. What good is your friendship when every pony you care about turns against you? Trixie doesn't need friends that will drag you down. You can understand that, can't you, Twilight Sparkle? Doesn't it hurt you that your friend Spike would turn against you and help free Discord? Trixie smiled in triumph, watching Twilight's face go from sad to confused and finally coming to rest on shock. Or did he just not trust you enough to tell you? Your own assistant, a good friend. I even hear he's like a brother to you. You're lying, Twilight half snarled, looking at Trixie with real anger for the first time. Spike wouldn't do something like that. Trixie answered with another arrogant smile. I think it's time for the great and powerful Trixie to take her leave. I told you, Applejack said, moving closer. Y'all ain't going nowhere. Green light flashed and Applejack found herself on the ground a dozen feet away. The crowd around the stage had broken up and disappeared, except for one white unicorn filly. You're finally ready to go? Crystal Ball asked. Trixie nodded. We'll finish this another time, Twilight Sparkle. With a flash of green light, they were gone. Twilight sat down in the shocked silence that followed their departure. Finally, Rarity spoke up. I'm sure she was just saying that to get to you. Spike would never help Discord. Twilight nodded. You're right. Wasn't that the little filly, the one you told us about? The changeling queen? Rarity nodded, shivering slightly at the week she'd spent in her own basement. Twilight! They looked up at the muffled call to see Rainbow Dash drop from the sky, a piece of paper in her mouth. She landed, and Twilight levitated the paper up to read it. It's from Spike, Rainbow said. For a moment, Twilight could have sworn she saw genuine fear in the Pegasus's magenta eyes. He's gone! Chapter end.